example 12 asks us to solve the equation the square root of x plus 7 equals x plus 1. Before you start this problem, excuse me, before you start, um, you see that there's a square root there, and there's always this thought that I need to square that and get rid of it. That's how you undo a square root, and that's correct. But what you want to think is, how can I do that to make my life easier? How can I do that to make my life, how can I do it to make my job here easier? What you want to understand is that these two sides are very, very different from each other. This side here is one term. This side here is two terms. Now you may be like, well, what does that matter? It's very important because when you square something, you're squaring the number of terms that it has, in a sense. Now sometimes you can collapse some and combine some, but in general, if you take one term and square it, you get 1. And if you have two terms and square it, you get 4. And it becomes more complicated. So what we want to try to do is try to get as few terms on one side as possible. Now in this particular problem, this is the best that we can do. There's no way to make anything better. So what we're going to want to do for a problem like this, involving a square root, is to simplify, get as few terms as we can on each side, and then go forward. So what I'm going to want to do is square this and square this side. Now this side here is going to become x plus 7. This side over here, remember how I told you two terms squared that are added together becomes 4. It is x squared plus x, which is 1 times x, plus x, which is x times 1, plus 1 squared, which is 1. Right? A lot more complicated just by adding one additional term. You have all these extra combinations of events that can occur, and so you have to do it this way. So you get x plus 7 to equal x squared plus 2x plus 1. We want to, at this point, realize, hey, okay, we've got an x squared, we've got some x's. This is a quadratic, and there are certain ways that we have to deal with them. You can't just try to take the square root of sides to get rid of stuff, right? There's a reason. Once we get to x squared with any other term, we have to now consider using quadratic formula or factor. So we're going to want to put everything on one side and 0 on the other. I'm subtracting an x and subtracting a 7 from both sides. So I should get x squared plus x minus 6 equaling 0. Now, if you were to do the quadratic formula or factor, you could end up finding that x is going to be either -3 or x will be a +2. Okay? So at this point in time, you need to stop and say, okay, you're not necessarily done. This is because we have square roots involved. Can we plug our numbers into our square root, and do they still work? Because one thing that we are not allowed to do is we're not allowed to take the square root of negative numbers, excuse me. So if we look back at the very beginning, here's our square root. It actually does work. If we were to plug either of these numbers in, we still do get... oh wait, oops, sorry. I lied. If we take -3 and plug it in, you'll get the square root of 4 equals -2, which that is not true, right? That's totally not true. And so you have to eliminate this as an option. This is something that happens because we transform the function. We kind of change the domain of what we could allow, and that's why this happened. So it's always important to check your answers. But 2 should work. If we plug in 2, we get the square root of 9 equaling 3, and that is a good solution. So we only have 1. So it's something you always want to check, because it could, in fact, lead you down the wrong path to an answer that's not true.